Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Tales of Agmar, the podcast. I'm your host and creator, Sinjin. How's your week been? Hopefully it's been great. Mine's been quite well. We've been trudging through the book, and obviously getting quite a few updates with that in the process. But first, the usual announcements here on the cast. We've got the Discord and the Ko-fi. They are linked in the show notes below. As always, the Discord is free. It's probably going to be free for Sinjin. It's going to be free forever. I really just wanted to be a place for everybody to come, interact. I'm never going to have paid portions of that Discord. It's just, the idea is it's supposed to be a community hub just for people to keep talking to each other, no matter what platform you find us on, whether that is Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, will possibly be on X soon. All kinds of other platforms, all the different podcasting ones like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. I think we're on like Audible too, which is really just through Amazon Music. Stuff like that, right? It's just a place for everyone to come together. Or if you're on one of those more obscure apps that I know it's on there, but I can't ever seem to find where I'm at. Not sure how that works, but if someone wants to tell me, leave the comments below, feel free to. But anyways, right, place for us to communicate, talk to each other, have some good times. You guys drop fan theories, etc., etc. We'll see which one of those ones come true. And then Ko-fi, it's just a tip jar, right? It's kind of the only monetization we've got going on with the cast right now. And that's good. I feel like it's just a good thing to kind of have as an option. That until, we get the book out, since that is the big thing. And talking about that, sorry, one more thing. I am working on more ways just to reduce the cost of this podcast, like what it costs me to produce this podcast each and every month and week. And that's just like money-wise. Time-wise, I'm totally okay spending the time. I've got the time for it, just not money and stuff like that. So anyways, I'm reducing costs there. So if stuff sounds a little bit more prototypey, then that's why. It's just me trying to reduce costs. I'm learning new things all the time, picking up those different skills, just so I can do more things myself. And then in turn, get to a quality that I want it to be, is the idea behind all that. But, okay, sorry. This is like the next big thing, right? So as of time of recording, we are working through the last, by we, I mean me, right? So I'm typing up the last 5 chapters of the book. And then I also have, as I mentioned last week, I've got my girlfriend, and she is working through kind of reading the book, giving me that feedback. It's sort of like an alpha read so that it reads better for you guys. Then from there, we'll go on to that, beta reading where you guys will get to read it. You'll get to drop comments both on what I'm going to run as Royal Road or some site like Royal Road. I'm mostly just leaning towards Royal Road because I'm going to drop it as sort of a week by week or like a day by day kind of thing, as I will sort of do some like last minute edits of like a couple chapters if there were to be any that I feel like I needed to do. Most of those just being spelling and grammatical things. I don't want to change tons of the plot right now, obviously. Well, we're not really going to be doing much of that anyways, but or like, keeping track of names in case I accidentally named somebody different, which could have happened a couple, 100,000 words in. So anyways, the book came pretty big. I'm super excited about it. I hope you guys are too. It has been a blast reading through everything, tying up the ends, and I'm really excited to drop it on Royal Road, and that is kind of the direction I'm heading towards right now in terms of like where to drop it, just so it's a safe place for you guys to go read it. I'll double check to see if someone has to make an account to even read on Royal Road. From what I've looked at on the surface, it doesn't seem like you need to, but I'll double check for y'all and get back to you around the time that the book ends up dropping, just because me, probably like most of you, I don't really enjoy continuously making new accounts to be able to access stuff all the time, which is another thing that I'm thinking of moving forward with other things is right? I mean, I have like tons of plans for Tales of Agmar in the future, based off of how big it does. If it ends up going past the books, kind of like website stuff, etc., etc. I want to make stuff as safe for everyone that loves Tales of Agmar to be able to interact with it online and in person. And as well as like tons of other ethical stuff aside from just normal safety things. Obviously, if I'm shipping things, I want to get like the best shipping time for you guys. That does so while still being reasonable in tons of different ways, and isn't like super expensive, etc., etc. Stuff like that, right? So, anyways, at the end of it all, we're going really strong. The community's building. I'm really excited. And yeah, if you're not following at this point, please follow us on whatever platform you can follow us on. Definitely drop your comments. I love talking, interacting with you guys as best as I can. And yeah, sorry, one last thing. I've been putting all this stuff at the end, but we're going to put it here. New episodes come out every Monday for this podcast at 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So now that is everything, finally, for the announcements. So let's get into Aster's origin story. If any of you remember from last week, we ended on a note of Aster. She's a lot older now. She's then thus began, I think we said she was about 12. She's now interacting with some locals in quotation marks. And we're just going to dive more into what that group is for right now. So, as you can probably tell with the quotation marks, at first it's just kind of hanging out, right? It's a group of kids that are kind of close to her age, sort of also going to the school, some of them not going to the school. A lot of them are class 5s, not a lot of them are class 4s, as what happens often with inside the Tales of Agmar universe. People in the Ellonist Republic kind of tend to stay within their class, unless it's between class 2s and class 3s, if they're like family or friends, that kind of thing, right? That's about where you have most of your interaction. And then class 1, that being the counselor as well as his kind of like extended personal governing body, right? They just only interact with class 2s. So we got that there, right? But tons of class 4s, class 5s, tons of class 5s for everyone to interact with. So that's mostly who Aster is kind of interacting with now. Is that, I guess that does kind of retcon my chat, but I'm sort of, I guess, so I start like explaining things out loud, out of my head, and then it starts making sense. So bear with me there. But right, since we'll retcon that right now, 4s and 5s are really going to interact with each other. And then 3s and 2s are really going to interact with each other. There's not a lot of branch between those two unless a 4 moves up to a 3 by being a Marine and getting promoted to a high enough rank to then get that class advancement. So now that that's out of the way, right? So they just hang out, do things, have parties, kind of pre-tween the teen stuff that you would expect in a sci-fi mega city full of tons of stuff. Aster personally never really ends up doing drugs, though those would be present in these kinds of parties as they are now, just because people will be people and we will smoke random things. But yeah, anyways, all right, so she just avoids these things while still having fun, because that's totally possible. And it gradually turns into other things, as it does sometimes when you let kids just kind of roam about and do whatever and don't give them any background and don't give them any education on like ethics or do's and don'ts of life to a degree, right? Turns into stuff like shoplifting. So she ends up kind of stealing random things, little extra rations here, some more of like sugar rations, etc., right? Kind of slowly escalating this problem that she has. Eventually, she ends up finding out that it's actually a gang. She's just joined this really big gang and didn't realize how big it was. At least big in her eyes. Really, there's tons of gangs. There's a lot larger gangs on Bliss, and a lot of Bliss is actually run by gangs under the surface. Just no one really talks about it because they keep producing the output that the Ellonist Republic needs, and as long as they stay there at that output producing threshold and even a little bit more, the Republic as a whole is not that concerned about them. Even if they were to spread to other systems, it can be viewed as a weird sort of mutually beneficial agreement by the government overall. As long as they don't turn into rebels and try to secede from the Ellonist Republic, then that's when they become more of a problem within the bureaucracy's eyes. All right, so now at about 13 years of age, she has to leave the school that she's a part of because this gang's gotten big enough that, the government could find her easily. And we kind of talked about how there's like under the surface stuff. The government really likes to keep the gang activity and the relations with the gangs under the surface. So if someone that's supposed to become an upstanding citizen, run through the public education system, etc., is found connected to the gangs, then they do run sting ops that way. So start to create this separation, right? Because if they ever have to go and just take out a bunch of gang people, they either one, want to know where they are, or two, want to know that that's mostly who they're taking out, right? They're not taking out their citizens that they know for sure are loyal to the Republic, because this is about as much human preservation as the Republic kind of goes off of. As long as you are for sure loyal, or they're at least pretty, like 90% sure that you're loyal, then they're going to keep you around, because it's a lot easier for you than to teach whoever you're around to be loyal than to, have to create all new people, have to add an extra military law, etc., because then they can't just throw and pound out with some force wherever they need to across the galaxy. So this becomes one of her first big hacking gigs or hacking attempts, however you want to look at that, where she's got and she does this for some other students as well that have joined this gang, but she breaks into the school's network, right, and kind of erases, not kind of, but does erase their existence. Makes it so basically, right, like they're still citizens, but it's as if they never went to school. Household addresses are erased. It's not really like she or much of the other kids were living out households anymore, as they would be hanging out mostly by themselves. And this comes after about a year from her, like 12 to 13 years of age, of her just kind of progressively sloughing more and more days of school off. So she, principal or instructors could kind of already pick up that something was happening, but now she just disappears away digitally from her ever being there. And honestly, at the end of the day, the government could care, but doesn't really care, because this is Bliss. Really, they're just trying to get the refined resources out of it and whatever expeditionaries they can, which is another thing where like it's really, really easy within the Ellonist Republic system to recruit class 5 citizens as expeditionaries, and almost all gang-related activities automatically put you at a level 5, and so you're not really a level 4 anymore. And if they ever need, expeditionaries, conveniently, this is like a common theme through other expendable sci-fi military forces, right? But sometimes it can be easier to just grab a bunch of gangbangers and just go throw them at your enemies, because they already kind of know how to shoot and have already kind of been in similar situations. And it's not like you're really trying to add too much more organization to them. So as long as you have some way to control them in the back, stop them from shooting your guys, then it actually works out really well for you. Now, what we're going to run into for the rest of this is for the rest of this cast, is kind of what she ends up doing in this gang environment on Bliss. Right? So after the big hacking attempt, she disappears, right? That's across the entire world. The head of the gang notices that she does this, right? It kind of takes long enough, word gets around that she can hack and that she hacked really good and made him disappear, right? And then she can show proof, right? Thus proving to this gang leader that she's actually of some value, which ends up being both good and bad for her, right? So she hits this weird sort of commodity / person. Sorry, I wish you guys could see my hand gestures. I realize I make a lot of those, and that helps a lot more in conversation when I'm talking to people. But anyways, she becomes more of this commodity, right, that gets either loaned out to other gangs for the purpose of hacking, or just gets kept by, the gang that she's a part of. Spoiler, she ends up getting dipped around to a lot of other gangs to then be their designated hacker, right? Whether that's they're just breaking into another group's system, their terminals. They could use it to get into buildings, kind of hide money, flood money around. Washing money could be a big thing, except the interesting thing about the Tales of Agmar universe is that the Republic uses miri, which is actually a sort of money that they've just always used. And it doesn't have a sort of digital imprint. So it's actually a very free currency. And sorry, we're going to take a minute of Aster's cast to talk about this. But right, it's a free currency. And what I mean by that is it doesn't have things like tracking numbers. Conveniently, actually, nobody knows how to produce it. And that means that within the galaxy, within the Ellonist Republic's field of, power, there's only so much of it. There's tons of it, but there's only so much of it. No one really knows how it got there. It kind of got lost in some of the beginning histories of the Ellonist Republic, which has been around for a good while, just sort of time-wise and galactic time-wise within this universe. But they continue to use that to this day because it's really easy. It's already an established one. Yes, they could go in and try to have like a more digital-based currency, or kind of have a currency that leaves some sort of fingerprint as it goes through other people's hands. But that does make it so that washing money isn't a problem. If the government gets hold of a lot of money, they don't have to try to explain it to the populace or to themselves. They can just come into a whole bunch of it, which does happen a lot. But that does prove other problems, right? Where in this case, there's no way to track it. But I like the idea of free money systems, like free currencies, kind of like how, gold, right? There's like a standard unit of it. And that's the same thing. Everyone has ways to know that, this is miri, because it's a very unique shape, very unique, like hexagonal cylinder that, again, right, I said nobody knows how to make. So trading it becomes very easy to trade with. And then there are still like relics from days past that are like, 100% this is miri, and other times they're like, okay, this actually is counterfeit. Sort of a thing there, right? So there's just a little glimpse into the money system inside the Ellonist Republic. Now, so let's jump back into Aster. As she's running through there, right, getting past through gangs, what ends up happening is the Underworld elite continue to find out more and more about her innate talent, as well as her extensive knowledge of Ellonist systems, right? She's worked with terminals since she's a kid, and worked with Ellonist terminals for a little bit. And thankfully, since most of Ellonist government technology is everywhere, right? Just they kind of make everything that's roughly all the same. Their protections might be higher rated than other people's, but she knows how to get around them and has developed ways to do so herself that are different than what the Republic normally teaches in the classroom for hacking, which makes it a lot easier for her to get into other places. Thus, making her, again, that kind of exclusive thing where, you want her, especially if you're planning a big job against the government. We just talked about miri. If you're going to go hack into a truck full of miri and take it for yourself, then you want that truck to stop. And you could make it lock doors, etc., etc. She's going to be able to do stuff like that through different kinds of terminals depending on what's available around her. All right, and so that's what she does. Or, right, maybe you're going to waltz into a bank vault full of miri. She's going to be able to go and do that for you and do it really easily and almost make it like your group was never there, to the point where she becomes like super, super good. Her original gang gets absolutely just destroyed one day, kind of all of her childhood friends. That makes her close in a little bit here, right? Because it was a group of people that she'd opened herself up to again, and then they all kind of died again. And as what can happen is a person closes in besides that. Now, she really keeps going until she meets a specific friend. And for right now, just since the book is going to come out, I'm going to leave that name blank. It was something that I originally was going to write in, but I was really thinking about it right before recording this. And I think it's just good if it stays blank, give you guys something to look forward to for the book. And obviously this isn't Gander, right? Gander was never on Bliss. He, at this time, is actually all the way back on his home planet still. But Aster's here. Meets his friend. I will let you know it is a girl. So
They kind of chat for a while, and this friend shows to her again. This is like a couple years later, right? So it's like been 2 years. She's about 15 now, but it shows her that it is possible to get back to her dream, right? She can escape this sort of gang life that she's stuck. Well, not sort of, but this gang life that she is definitely stuck in, and you know, go and explore the galaxy, find out more about the Ellonist Republic. Right now, Aster doesn't really understand how corrupt the government is. She knows that the Underworld is super corrupt, right? That can be pretty easy to figure out once you get in there. But she doesn't know how corrupt the Ellonist Republic governing system is at this moment. And they hatch a plan, right? This plan is obviously for them to get off Bliss, and more specifically, for them to get off Bliss and actually head off to the ACE training program, right? Aster had never really heard about this. Kind of hard to hear about it when you're a 4th or 5th class citizen, as most of their recruiting is done through either already existing Marine recruits kids, right? Or through class 3 citizens, as well as class 2 citizens if a kid were to ever be promoted to that point. And, they try to get them to be an ace. And some ace specialists, just for the record, could make it to a class 2 citizen. It's just, most of the time they just stay as like a class 3. Now, they surround this, right? And they chat about it. They figure it out. All that they need is they've got to have high access codes, right? From some ranking official, probably a ranking Marine official or an existing ACE operator or a proctor, like a high level proctor of some kind, from either a level 2 or level 3 citizen, right? The better the rankings, it's kind of like in the middle, right? Because if you get too high of a person promoting, that could be bad. Too low, also bad. Got to hit in the middle. But if they can hit in the middle, then that means that they would be able to get the codes to promote them to, be level 3s very easily. I mean, like Aster can do that in a heartbeat if she needs to. She's done it before in this case. But then they could be level 3s, make it seem legit through a whole back history of being promoted by a couple different people, as well as just having, at the end of the day, a main person with their high level access codes, then give them permission to go off the planet to Ragash to be trained in the ACES group. So, anyways, let's dig into a little bit of why, right? Well, we already kind of know why. So let's dig into a little bit of how she did this. Excuse me. So first off, she's got to get a terminal, right? She wants to break free from not this quite slave life, but this sort of stuck indentured servitude life where everyone keeps saying that they owe her for saving her, even though they haven't really been saving her. And they got to break out. So before we can get to the terminal, though, she has to get out of kind of the place where she's being held, right? They just kind of get a guard, right, to be like, oh hey, like let us go to a club. It's kind of, obviously this is going to get fleshed out a lot more later, but the big idea here, right, this is just one of my many prototypes of a story, is they convince a guard, whether that's through like kind of some name dropping or some just normal persuasion. They basically get one of the guards to be like, okay, yeah, sure, like we can go to basically the gang's club. So they go to the gang's nightclub. The girls eventually disappear, right? There's enough people there, they disappear in that horde of people. Then they need a portable terminal, right? That's kind of like a tablet sort of thing to hack and be able to store data. Aster conveniently knows a good place, that terminal store from when she was a kid. She still remembers where it is. So they make it there after hiding in the streets, kind of dodging some different enforcers. And the place is pretty beat up now. It's never had an owner since the previous guy got taken away by the PDF. And just for another thing here, let's just kind of break apart what these mega cities look like within Tales of Agmar, specifically the one on Bliss. So there's an inner city, which is like where the super elite people live. Got lots of protection. PDF is there. There is no gangs there, right? Any level 3 citizens on this planet all live there, highly protected. Then there's an outer city. You're going to get a lot more level 4s in this area. You might still have some gang stuff. PDF is still around. And this area is bigger than the inner city, but not as big as kind of like a suburbs or like an outer city. I'm calling it suburbs, but it might need a different name in the future. I'm still working on that. A lot of things are still work in progress as we're writing but as we're writing, like, I love how I keep saying we and it's just me, but I am writing the like main storyline, and then I'm working through different things as I get to them. But anyways, this kind of suburb area, basically an outer or outskirts of the city, still heavily populated, but a lot of the level 4s and then all of the level 5s are out in these suburbs, right? They still have tons of buildings, plenty of places for people to hide, sewer systems, all of that. And then a lot of the factories are actually going to be in the outer city, but shipping is in the inner city. So if you're going to have a starport, it's going to be in the inner city, right? A lot of your bigger, wealthier banks are going to be in that inner city. And then, as it kind of goes out, it gets more rugged, more rough, a lot more kind of survive on your own, but still produce for the Ellonist Republic sort of mindset, right? So now, getting into there, they've got the terminal. They've escaped the gang as far as they know to this moment. Now they've got to infiltrate the inner city, something that she hasn't done yet, especially since that's where all the military, aside from PDF and expeditionary recruiting offices are, right? Like, she could actually run 2 Marines here, possibly even a real, like we were talking about before, ace operator. And that's what she has to do. So they go in there, stealthy style. You can think whatever stealth movie you want. Get close to the inner city. This is where they need an access card, because it's really hard for Aster at this moment to fake an access card with her own information on it, right? Because she would pop up in the system too soon for it to really make sense. So they get to a point where they are able to clone a guy's card, and then he goes through. All right. So then Aster then goes into the terminal, does some more hacking, and with the cloned information from his card, makes it seem like he went out and then came back in, right? If you look at the logs on just really quick, you wouldn't be able to notice. You look at it too tight, you would be able to notice, right? But she doesn't leave her digital fingerprint over any of this. So now, because of where that is, she's in the inner city. Her and her friend are heading over to the ACE's recruitment office to basically be like, hey, we're ready to go. Now, this is an interesting problem, right? And we're going to talk more about it next week, because we're hitting about the mark that I usually like to hit for these episodes. But, right, so now she has to figure out, right, excuse me, they're going to find out that, as we know from as we know from Gander's cast, that there's kind of like this trial event, okay? They get lucky, the trial event lines up with when they're there. So the guy is just going to assume, oh, hey, you want to get into the trial event, is that what you mean? And then the girls are going to be like, oh, yes, of course, that's what we mean. Obviously, they really have to try and get into this. Now, it is more of like this initial trial event is a lot more, interactive kind of thing. It's going to be a lot more like in-person stuff, right? They're conveniently going to be able to use their skills from their past life to get through this. And then thanks to some of Aster's hacking ability, then that's really what's going to get them onto the transport, which takes them to Ragash. And then that is where we're going to pick up next week, is them dropping off in Ragash, kind of cover that first year of Ragash. And I don't know, I mean, for you guys that are listening week to week, kind of let me know, do you want to hear about the Ragash story? It's something that's kind of covered in some flashbacks in the main book line, but later I would be writing a book on it. So actually, yeah, you know what, leave me your comments. We'll kind of cover a little bit for like Aster's sake, and then if you guys really like, if I see a lot of comments start popping up, then maybe I'll just do an episode or 2 after this one. I'll start a little bit, or just do an episode talking about like what Ragash is, or we'll just kind of save that for a later day. Anyways, thanks so much for coming. Y'all are amazing people, and I just hope you know that. And yeah, till next time, this has been Sinjin with Tales of Agmar, and wherever you are, be a good one.